to another episode of Behind the Burger. I'm Carol Ann Romo, the Executive Director of the New Mexico Beef Council. Today we have a pretty fun episode. We're doing some podcast collaboration. Joining me are the Meat Dudes, or the hosts of the Meat Dudes podcast, Evan and Tyler. Thank you guys for joining and agreeing to have this fun, interesting episode.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, no, thank you. We're excited.
Yeah, me too. So will you guys, just start with your background and kind of introduce yourselves. I think you guys have a unique story. So
Yeah, totally. We're the Meat Dudes. So we, I'll start off with myself. I'm Evan, and been in the restaurant industry for, pretty much my whole life. Me and Tyler opened up a couple of restaurants, butcher shop, and really fell in love with Wagyu beef during COVID because our restaurant was basically shut down. So we had to find new ways to generate revenue. So we decided to bring in a full-blood Wagyu cow that was about, 8 to 10 miles away from us, raised 8 to 10 miles away from us.
I think it was like 17, maybe.
Yeah, it was really close. And we brought in this full-blood cow from Magnolia Ranch, and sold it out of our big garage door windows, had a huge line out the door. Everything was processed. We sold this whole thing in about 2 hours and got to taste a lot of it and really fell in love with Wagyu beef. And from that point on, I decided to open up a butcher shop, really focused on Wagyu beef, on American Wagyu beef. And it's kind of just been in our blood since then. We have the podcast. We're launching a Wagyu map, a Meat Dudes approved Wagyu map where you can find Wagyu all over the United States. That's been approved by the American Wagyu Association and approved by the Meat Dudes. And we're cooking it up. We're teaching people how to cook it and trying to make it more approachable. And it's really been a fun little ride.
I love that. Tyler, what about you?
Oh, this is my first rodeo. I haven't been doing this very long.
Sure.
I started cooking when I was about 14, which got my start at the world famous Burger King. I don't know if you've heard of Burger King before.
Heck yeah.
Made my way up to the Whopper station. That was my first accolade of cooking life. But then started cooking at a pretty predominant restaurant in my hometown of Billings, Montana. Learned all kinds of fresh produce products. Got my chops there, off to culinary school, and have been pretty much cooking my entire life. So this is now morphed into what Evan said. New passion is talking to people like you, talking to people in the beef industry all together. And Wagyu is kind of our jam. And the coolest part about all of that is all of my past history of cooking. I'm now applying it to all of these beautiful, lovely ranchers and products that get sent to us. And it is by far the greatest beef that we have ever tasted. And to be honest, it's raised in the United States. And there's going to be red flags thrown all over the place. Like, oh, that's not Wagyu. Well, yeah, it is. So do your research. We can get into genetics later. I know you like that subject also. But yeah, we like to argue those points a lot.
I love that. No, I think I think the Wagyu thing is still kind of an unknown. So I'm excited for you guys to be taking that flag and also helping us understand it more. And so you guys are based in Washington,
Seattle, Washington. Yeah, that's where our restaurants and butcher shop are. Yeah.
Very cool. Okay. But then came from Billings. Now I'm just, on a side note, kind of curious which restaurant in Billings.
You're probably not. It's not there anymore.
Okay.
It was a place called Sydney's Pizza Cafe, which was a Peter Kelsey design, kind of an offshoot of like a California Pizza Kitchens, kind of a
love that.
Wolfgang puck kind of idea.
Yeah.
But as a youngster and not knowing how to cook anything, it was a pretty decent education for a 15-year-old.
Absolutely. Yeah. I just love Billings, and we used to with my last job we used to host events at the Northern.
Nice.
Yeah, the really fancy hotel right there downtown Billings. Haven't we all? Into the lobby. Yeah, it was a great spot. Very fun. Well, cool. Okay, so you guys are based in Seattle. Well, I feel like let's talk about Wagyu. So you already kind of brought it. How is American Wagyu regular Wagyu? Let's just jump in.
Yeah. Go ahead, Evan. You're chomping. I can see it.
Well, I mean, I think the first thing when we got into it, we ordered that whole Wagyu beef, and I was looking for podcasts, I was looking for books, I was looking for information about Wagyu, and there really wasn't anything, especially about American Wagyu, and so that's really why we started the podcast, the Meat Dudes. And there's so many misconceptions out there about what Wagyu is, and Wagyu is only that bright white and pink A5 Wagyu from Japan. Otherwise, it's not real Wagyu. Well, Wagyu it means Japanese cow, right? So in the 90s, there was about 200 and some Japanese black cows that came over to the U.S. legally. And since then, we have been raising, I say we, but the industry has been raising full-blood Wagyu beef in the United States. So it really is just all about the genetics. So every single Wagyu cow, or most Wagyu cows in the United States, can be traced all the way back to those original cows that were brought over in the 90s. Now, I think the biggest thing with the Wagyu industry right now is there isn't a lot of transparency, and there's a lot of people out there saying that they have Wagyu beef. I've got an Arby's Wagyu burger. I go to every shop down in California has Wagyu beef burgers, and like, where does it come from? So that's where we really want to, help with the transparency of it and show people that it's always great, no matter where you buy your beef. It's always great to know where your beef comes from. That's the number one thing. Whether you're buying conventional beef, whether you're buying Wagyu beef, know where it comes from so you can see if it's actually registered. Is it with the New Mexico Beef Council? Is it with the American Wagyu Association, the Akaushi Wagyu Association, the Australian Wagyu Association? Like any of these things, you want to have that credibility there. And so that's one of the main things that we always talk about. But yes, it comes back to Japanese genetics raised in the U.S. That's what we call American Wagyu. American Wagyu is just a Wagyu cow. Could be full blood, could be crossed with an Angus cow to make it an F1 cross. That is also Wagyu. That is going to be 50% Wagyu, 50% Angus. There's purebred Wagyu, which is basically Wagyu beef that is 93.75% Wagyu genetics, and then another, basically 7% other. So that means that down the line from the 1990s to now, it's somewhere it's been crossbred and then brought back up. So it's a spectrum. That's what we try to get across. It's not just that A5 Wagyu that you can have 2 ounces of and think, oh, I'm full. Like, this is American Wagyu beef. And from F1 cross to full blood, it looks amazing. It looks like ultra prime beef. You can buy F1 cross Denver steaks for $15. You could buy a full blood tomahawk for $200. There's everything in between. And that's like the big thing right there. It's not just $200 a pound anymore. It's everything.
We're also here to squash the bullshit, right? There's no such thing as Kobe in the United States. You're not getting Kobe. You're not.
You're not getting Kobe. No.
No, right.
Yeah.
Also, let's say we're not going to name said fast food restaurant, but they say they've got a Kobe or a Wagyu burger.
I think I already dropped the Arby's, but yeah.
The Arby's, there you go. So we learned last week that there was an executive that was kind of in charge of that whole movement and program, and 25% of the grind was actually a little bit of Wagyu. So,
but Tyler, that's one of the issues, right? Is that there's
that is one of the
so technically it is, but there's no the USDA isn't coming in and saying it has to be this right. much right now. That's a huge thing.
So we're pushing for that certification, right? And like even myself, like just flipping this restaurant into a Wagyu smash burger concept about seven months ago, I was very concerned with my custom grind. So I got in contact with our number one meat guys that do an amazing job for us, Preservation Meat Collective. And we decided that we were going to do at least 52% in the grind. So it's going to be either a purebred and Angus grind or whatever. So I got pretty nerdy about it because I didn't want to false advertise myself and then stick my foot in my mouth, which I'm used to doing on the regular. But
that's actually an interesting thing too on your special grind. I didn't know about that at restaurants until working at the Beef Council. We sponsored a green chili cheeseburger smackdown. There's a bunch of green chili cheeseburger contests in New Mexico. It's very fun. It's our tradition. And the smackdown.
What is that?
So the The green chili cheeseburger smackdown is like the second weekend in September, and then the original green chili cheeseburger contest, I think is what it's called, but it's called the original, is at the state fair also in September. It's like the first 2 weeks of September are two big green chili cheeseburger contests, but we sponsored the beef for the smackdown. And what I told the restaurants is I said, hey, I had assumptions that they might have a secret sauce. And I said, I'm just going to reimburse you for the beef you're buying. I'm not going to tell you what beef to buy because it's a restaurant. I get it. And you're making your special, secret thing. And I said, if you even want to white out something about the beef, but I just need to say beef on the receipt. I just want to see beef and I'll reimburse it. And it was neat because it was, one of them had 3 different places he sourced the beef from. And it was, a 70-30 here and an 80-20 there and a this and that and whatever. And he mixed his own, mix. And then another one was buying, local New Mexico beef. And so it was just fun to see and fun to learn about that restaurant side of it, chef side of it, that you're, to me, I'm like, oh, I don't know. Is it 80-20? Is it 90? What are you buying? I don't know. But then does it taste good is my real question, right? Because I'm not in the restaurant business.
That's the bottom line right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes behind it. That's very interesting. So when you say the Kobe, that is like comes from a specific region. It's kind of like champagne, right?
Yes,
okay.
Exactly.
So then it would have to be exported in a box to get here anyways, because that beef would have to be raised there. That'd be pretty complicated.
And it's very, very expensive.
Okay.
So if you see somebody that has a Kobe beef burger, you know that it's not actually Kobe beef because that burger would be $150 to $200. And that's sometimes that, but I will say, like in the beginning, like Wagyu is a young industry. So some people, when it first came over, they were calling it Kobe because people associated that with Wagyu. And so it's just been called that. But now we're trying to clear that up.
Ultimately confused everybody.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Right?
Absolutely.
Restaurants have to have like a certain like license from like Kobe beef has its own like marketing like firm basically. And you have to have like a special privilege and like license and authorization to be able to serve it at your restaurants.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
This episode of Behind the Burger is brought to you by the New Mexico Beef Council. At NMBC, we're all about supporting New Mexico's ranchers and bringing the story of beef to life, from pasture to your plate. If you're enjoying these conversations, be sure to follow us on social media to keep the journey going. You'll find us on Instagram and TikTok at NMBeef and on Facebook at NM Beef Council. We're sharing ranch life, beef tips, recipes, and the people behind the plate. Come be part of the story.
So very comparable to champagne in some ways, right? That you can't use the name if you're a winery. So you cannot use a champagne name.
Yeah. So like all Kobe is Wagyu, but not all Wagyu is Kobe. Is basically
cool. Yep. I get that. Okay. And then what about I didn't ask you guys this before. What about the Wagyu and the massaging the beef thing that people always talk about? What's that? Why do people always tell me that? Is that a real thing? I always tell them I don't think that's a real thing.
Probably not. I mean, they're very docile animals. Okay. And in Japanese culture, they don't have a lot of land. They don't have like wide open, grasslands to raise a ton of Wagyu beef. So they are raised in smaller, areas. So they don't have hundreds of Wagyu cattle out there in each rancher doesn't. They have like 2 to 10. So they take really good care of them. And I don't think they massage them, but they make sure that they're very low stress so they don't build up that cortisol because they want to make sure that the meat is extremely tender and these cows have a great life. But I don't think that they're just sitting there massaging them all day long. They probably take good care of them.
That's what I've said. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. We hope and we believe they're taking care of them. But yeah, I always have said I think it has more to do with, the genetics, that marbling and that tenderness comes because this is a unique breed of cattle that causes that.
It's all genetics. I'd say 90% of genetics and 10% of how it's treated and how it's raised.
Oh, yeah. There's debate about that. In fact, Even like some people say 70-30, some people say 40-60, but we know that when you start with Wagyu, you start with a higher floor. Absolutely start with a higher floor of marbling.
I hope I didn't just get myself in trouble. Our ranchers are going to be like, "What'd you say?"
No, oh no, well, and we talk about genetics. There's the conversation goes a lot of ways. Every rancher is thinking about genetics. Every beef producer is thinking about genetics, whether it be, we had a conversation with someone about, beef on dairy and having, now dairy animals, they're producing a beef calf and they're making that cross because they're making a more valuable calf in the dairy process. Or we talk about, a lot of the black cows are considered Angus, right? And that's because, somewhere in the line there was Angus bred in. And yeah, so it is complicated, but every beef producer, I should say, because you don't have to be a rancher. You can be a feedlot operator. Some cattlemen want to be called cattlemen. There's even some that are okay with being called beef farmers. In New Mexico, you're typically a rancher, not a farmer, though.
Yeah.
So I'm always careful with what label.
Totally.
But yeah, absolutely. Genetics are always a conversation. So Wagyu is a breed of beef, and it's a breed of beef that originated in Japan, brought to America. Same genetics, same cattle, theoretically, right?
Yeah, they can,
or same genetics.
It's all traceable, right? It's all traceable back to
basic.
original cattle, that were shipped there. And there's 4 different breeds too. There's 4 different breeds of Wagyu. There's the Japanese black, there's the red, which is the Akaushi, and then there's the shorthorn and the pole. And you see probably 90% black over here, and maybe 80%, maybe 10% Akaushi red, and then not very much of the shorthorn and pole yet. The black is like known for marbling the best. The Akaushi is known for like more of a tender, meatier flavor that still marbles really well. And then you can cross those too. We've seen people have black and red cross. And I mean, like I said, it's a huge spectrum. That's what we love about it, that you don't have to find one thing and say, oh, I don't want to spend that much money. Yeah, actually, there's a lot of different ways you can do Wagyu.
And I can imagine probably down where you are, Caroline, that there's always this silent competition between ranches and who comes up with the best product, right?
Everybody's trying.
We're learning, like, there's so much dynamic in the Wagyu industry because it is so small. Everybody knows each other. Everybody knows what everybody's doing. There's some gatekeeping going on of like, oh, this is my feed. I don't want to tell anybody this feed. And then you get into the Akaushi, the red versus the black. And there's a lot of ranchers out there that like swear by Akaushi, but most of them are like, nope, black all the way. So it's kind of fun actually to get in between all this stuff and kind of poke the bear a little bit and see who says what,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, and breed of cattle means so much to so many people, right? So we have there's a lot of the cattle in New Mexico have to be kind of desert acclimated. And so there's a lot of the Brahmin influence, or, a lot of Brangus cattle. And sometimes they talk about, there's a lot of ear on those cattle. Well, in a lot of ways, it's an important part of our climate to have an animal that is adapted. And so, but they because, the Brahmas have the big floppy ears, really cute ears, honestly.
Yeah.
And so the Brangus, they always say, it's got a lot of ear on them. You might, but it's become a great breed. And then there's other breeds, we personally have Coriani cattle. Same thing. They've got a lot of ear and they've got a really long face. And so not everybody like them. And then they're also a horned animal. And so there's, when I tell Coriani.
Okay.
And it's Corriente, is really how it's said, I think. And it's, they are a horned animal, and they are like what ropers, like rodeo people use, is the Corriente. And so when I always have to apologize to my board or people, I'm like, I know it's my Corianis, I'm sorry, because they're just not that beautiful beef animal that even, a Wagyu is going to be more high esteemed than a Coriani. But I don't mean that in disparagement. I mean that in, self-deprecation. I love a Coriani. So if anybody's listening, understand I love all breeds of cattle, and I represent all breeds of cattle. But there is competition and there's preferences. And how fun is that there's so many breeds out there that we can have a conversation and have a, fun preferences and teasing each other.
That's the longhorn, almost longhorn steer, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Koreanis look like a longhorn. They're just usually a solid black or a solid red, I think, is from what I understand. And then the black ones are maybe the ideal Koreani. And then, but they cross them a lot, right? Just like they cross with longhorns all the time. So yeah, it's like that rodeo looking cattle, but they're very drought adapted, right? So personally, I like that they're drought adapted. They're stronger. They're used to walking really far for water, and people like to joke that they can live on rocks. Of course, our cattlemen and women are taking better care of them than giving them rocks. But
it's the same as the Brahma, right? The Brahma's pretty drought tolerant, right?
Yes. Yeah.
It's got the camel hump.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. That Brahma could live on probably same thing they'd say, right? Brahmins can live on rocks and weeds. Yeah. So no, but like you said, it's the competition, it's the fun conversation, and I would like to think that usually it's all in good fun, and we all understand that people are raising cattle based on a preference, based on their environment, based on what they had access to, right? So that's why yeah. And like you said,
we haven't seen any fist fights yet over it.
Right. We're gonna tease and what a fun industry.
We're all in this together, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of my favorite part about the industry is we can tease and we can have fun, but most ranchers are willing to, laugh at themselves or be humble and understand that they're just trying to do the best they can with what's been given to them.
Totally. You're right. Totally.
Absolutely. Well, so we like to talk about like cattle handling processes or growing processes. We've kind of already talked about the misconceptions, maybe some, but is there anything in particular as you guys have talked to ranchers, Wagyu ranchers, is there anything that stands out, especially coming from your background on the food side, that you guys appreciate or you learned about cattle handling practices?
I think one of the most interesting things for me is how docile, like Evan said, these animals are, and where they're very they're not picky. They're just sort of selective and kind of free range, if you will. If they're hungry, they'll mosey on over and eat a little bit, and then they're tired and they'll just mosey on back and chill out. And like, it's not like when you get into an full Angus ranch where you throw feed over the fence and run the other way because they are going to come after it. It's been really interesting to hear stories and actually see these cattle in person, and like Shugatani at Bar R. How big is that animal, Ev? It's like 2,800, 3,000 pound animal. He's 18 years old, still the sire. And I jumped the fence and just hopped over there and started petting him. And like, I wouldn't do that at an Angus bull, right? Those guys are scary.
Yeah.
We had really, that's been kind of interesting to see how that works on the ranch.
Yeah, we had a really fun podcast with our buddy Adam Wackel out of Plum Creek Wagyu in Nebraska, where he actually did a full podcast with his little headset on and all his Wagyu cattle around him in his finishing a lot. And
they're in the middle of the field.
There's like
I love that.
And like they were just coming up and like sniffing the camera and like. Oh, he did the whole thing, and he's like, I would never do this if it was Angus, because they're just a lot. He just wanted to prove really how docile these animals are, and it was really cool. It was cool to see that, and I think that helps with a lot of the tenderness of the meat. And yeah, and they're we always kind of say they're almost more like cats, and the Angus is like dogs, right? Like you put the feed out for the cat, and they just kind of eat when they want. You put the feed out for the dog, and it's gone. But yeah, but they don't. Another point is they look different, right? Like, so every Angus rancher, every rancher that doesn't raise Wagyu looks at these and they're like, I don't want that thing. Like that looks ugly. It's small. It doesn't look like it has enough yield or meat on it, And so but when like our buddy Jesse, when she said, yeah, when you take their shirts off, man, they look pretty dang good.
I love that. I think, and I think too, sometimes now Angus, they're kind of breeding in more docility, right? and it's, you know, become more of a focus in some ways, but I think that's really interesting. I do have, there one of our, actually my first podcast I did was with Belinda Lavender of Lavender Brangus. And I have pictures of her little Brangus cows kissing her and hugging on her. And that was pretty cute too. So, I don't know if that's a Brangus breed characteristic or a Belinda's cattle characteristic.
Right.
But no, I love that. That's really neat. Are they, so just out of, you know, curiosity and uninformed, are they drought tolerant? Do they like specific climates, or do you know about them in that way?
You know, a lot of people, so we're talking like full blood black, they're raised in Texas. They're raised up north in Nebraska. You know, they're everywhere. And so I know, like, we talked to our buddies down in Florida at a Everglades Ranch, and they raise like an F1 cross, which is 50% Wagyu, and then an Angus Brahman mix, because that does better down there. But honestly, we hear that, you know, I've heard stories of you know, Wagyu that's been raised in Texas, and they moved them up to Minnesota, and they're just fine. And so it's really unique. Yeah, I've heard that a lot from a lot of different ranchers, that they can go pretty much wherever, and they're pretty successful. But they are, you got to think of Japan and like its climate as well, like where they come from. Typically, you know, like in Kobe, isn't Kobe what they say, right exactly in line with the Everglades Ranch in Florida? Like, so they have like the actual exact same, like, you know, climate there.
Longitudinal line.
So yeah, so I mean, I think it does probably a little bit better in the warmer. I you know, don't totally quote me on that, because so many people have told me that it does just as well up in the cold. So
they seem pretty adaptable.
Very, very adaptable.
And it's a longer growing period, right? So we saw, I was able to see in Australia, there was a university project, and I wish I had remembered the university off the top of my mind. But they were doing a project where they took all the breeds of cattle, or a bunch of, they, you know, chose a few breeds. So it was Hereford, it was Wagyu, it was Black Angus, it was Brahma, Charolais, and then maybe a cross, maybe like a Baldy or something. But they had them all in the pen, and they were getting the same feed and they were born in the same week. They were all of these things just to test the breeds. And the Wagyu was significantly smaller. And that was the whole conversation, is they take longer to get to a finishing point. Right. And that was just an interesting thing, right? That's probably why they're so marbled, right? They're an older animal at the point of harvest.
And they're kind of like slow fed too. That's a big thing a lot of the Wagyu ranchers talk about, is how they do a slow feed for a longer period of time. So a lot of them, you know, depending on an F1 cross or a full blood, will harvest at 24 to 29 months. That's really like the sweet spot.
Therein lies the problem, the perception problem, is that yes, it does take longer for these animals to reach harvest, but when they do reach harvest, the quality is exponentially better to where it's worth more money. So it's kind of like how you look at it, right? So a lot of ranchers are like, oh, I can't make any money on that. Like, well, once you see the product compared to your product that you're raising right now, and you don't need to go full blood, you don't need to go purebred, just start with a cross in your ranch. And we have tons of people out there on our team that can do that for any ranch in the United States. Like, oh, wow. They are specialists in saying like, hey, I'm going to come into your ranch. I will turn this product around in 3 years, and your cattle are going to be worth X percentage more per pound. Trust in me, I got it. Like, they're so good at it. I don't even understand what they're saying.
Yeah, but they know the genetics. Yeah, and they know which bull to cross or whatever. Exactly. That's right. So neat. Yeah. And I did, I just looked up really quick. It was University of New England in Armidale in Australia that was doing that study. So they should get a shout out, because it's very interesting. And I don't know what I never found the end result of the study. But anyways, so that's really neat that you're saying it takes longer, but you're going to have that increase in margins in the end. So it's probably scary though, if you're used to raising, you know, Angus or, you know, a Black Baldy, the Hereford Angus cross, or you're used to a certain breed. If you make a change, you've got to wait. And then if you're finishing them out, right? So if you're finishing them out, you've got to wait that first time, you've got to wait 2 years, sort of. Yeah. So that's probably, you know, scary, but you give them the confidence of some consulting and information about yes, and maybe you do it in, parts. So you get, a small paycheck here, and then in, 2 years you get that big one, right?
Yeah.
Evan, you should tell the story about Nashville when we were after hours. We were sitting at the bar having a drink, and
Yeah.
these two older ranchers, I don't know, must have been
They're in their
mid
70s.
60s, 70s, and they walked up and said, "You guys were the ones cooking all those Wagyu steaks. We're going to go home right now and introduce Wagyu into our ranch." These are 70-year-old people.
Love that.
At 70, doing that their whole lives, their minds were changed just by stopping by and tasting this meat. They were like, "Oh my God."
Yeah, and I think most of the ranchers, most of the ranchers we talk to, a lot of them have Angus herds, and they do F1 cross. They mix the the Wagyu and the Angus, and so for us, like for me, it's like it's such a better product, but obviously I wouldn't tell anyone to just go, hey, just jump full in and go, because it takes 3 years, right? Like that's insane. So like, I don't know, test a couple things, like work your way up to it, and then see how that beef turns out. Because a lot of people we deal with right now have their Angus herd, have their F1 herd, and are working on their full blood herd, and they're seeing huge a huge benefit out of that. And when we were down at CattleCon, like Tyler was saying, Tyler cooked up 100 Wagyu steaks from 8 different ranches in 2 days on one pan. And we served them. I sliced everyone, served them to all of these ranchers. And I thought we were going to get so much like pushback, but everyone was like, oh my God, this is actually really, really good beef. And so, yeah, like you said, people are coming up to us saying, I might get into this. Maybe I'll buy a full blood bull and let's see what happens. So yeah, I'm pretty confident that a lot of those people in the next 5 to 10 years are going to start making that change, just to see what it takes, and seeing the difference between the beef.
I kind of equate this, as my chef background, to, I don't know if you all remember the organic label coming to fruition, right? When you go to even like Safeway or Albertsons or Fred Meyer or whatever, the produce section's gigantic. And then they have this teeny tiny little lit up section that said organic. That was, 15 years ago. You go to any grocery store, I don't know how it is down there, but in Seattle, it's a very, King County, I should say, very health driven, kind of grassroots kind of folk out here that like someone, I only eat organic, I only eat grass fed beef, So I think that this is kind of the beginning of that trend where when you would go to said vegetable farmer and say, hey, you should grow organic vegetables, it would take 10 years for the USDA to certify that farm to be, and they're like, I can't wait 10 years. And like, what if one of my crops goes bad and da 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 da. So I understand the fear of breaking that mold and maybe fucking it up. But I do believe that this is kind of the beginning of that movement, to where once people really understand the genetics and the quality of Wagyu and how little it takes to actually move that into your breed that you have now, I think it's we're on the precipice of that beginning to be a huge thing.
Yeah.
I love that. I hope so. Yeah.
The dietary nutrition values, all that stuff. We can get all nerdy about that if you want, but it's good for you beef. It's heart healthy beef.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's your job to sell more beef, right?
Right. It's my job.
Yeah,
well, and I was thinking too, as you're talking about the folks at CattleCon, what is the common denominator of all of us in the industry for food, for ranching, all of that is good beef, right? We all love the taste of good beef, right?
Totally.
And so
Yes.
What a great selling point. You're eating a good beef steak and it's, wait, what is this? Wait, how do I do this? How do I create more of these? How do I, so I love that. We were at CattleCon as well. I'm so bummed I missed your booth. We were outside with the hot air balloon most of the time though. So we didn't get to see a lot of the inside. We were freezing though.
Oh,
yeah.
Nice. It was not nice.
No, it was very cold. There was one morning it was 19 degrees and we had our big beef it's what's for dinner balloon. And we were out there from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. and it was like 19 to maybe 25 that whole morning. And I came inside and I was just like shaking as sitting in one of my meetings, and I'm like, I think I'm cold. And they're like, do we need to turn the air down? And I was like, no, I think it's just from, residual effect of ballooning, as they call it, because in New Mexico we're yep.
Yeah.
So but we survived. I did make it into the Roper booth because there's discounts at the Roper booth, and
There you go.
I'm a sucker. But we love CattleCon, and we're excited to go back to Nashville next year. So hopefully you guys will be back there.
We'll
again.
see you there.
Yeah, I love it. And isn't that the story though? Everything happens at the bar or the restaurant after. The best part about CattleCon is the people that are going to CattleCon and the networking that easily happens over a beer or a steak or something. Absolutely.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
I'm a big fan. Okay, so what about you guys? We love to ask this of ranchers, but what's the most rewarding part of being in the food industry or the Wagyu industry now? What's the most rewarding part to you?
For me, it's community. I just love to network. I love to talk with people. I love to continue to be educated. I mean, that's one of the greatest things about a culinary background is you can't ever learn it all. There is no such thing, right? Whichever direction you take off of culinary school or whatever restaurant you worked at, or like I cooked Italian food for 10 plus years of my career and love it. And then it kind of steered into Asian cuisine. Love it. And but I can't learn it all. But so continuing to educate myself, and this is a new one for me, talking to ranchers, talking about DNA genetics. It's like super nerdy shit. I love it. It's fun.
Yeah.
What about you, Evan?
I like that that the Wagyu industry is a new growing industry, and we can influence that positively and really try to change people's minds and keep educating them about this beef. That's a big thing for me. I think we love doing education. We love talking to people and telling them how to do it the right way and to take the fear out of cooking Wagyu beef. And that's super rewarding. And yeah, the industry is just so small and so tight knit, and it's really cool to be a part of that. And I've always loved beef. I've always been a fan of beef in the beef industry. And this is a cool thing. I was actually in the cannabis industry before it took off. And so to me, I look at the cannabis industry and the Wagyu industry as almost being like the same thing, where I remember when it was 2010, before any of it was legalized in any state you were ever in. One of my buddies looked at me and said, in 10 years, people are going to be taking a CBD pill with their vitamin D pill every single morning. And it's just funny how that's come to be, where grandmas and parents are out there just getting little gummies, like, it just helps me fall asleep a little bit better. It's like, it's so normalized, and that's what we want with Wagyu. Instead of people saying, oh, that's fake or that's expensive, or you can't, I don't know how to cook it. We want everyone to be out there going, oh yeah, well, yeah, I might think about getting the F1 Cross Denver steak tonight. What are you thinking about? I want people to use that same verbiage and say that same language, and have it just be a normal thing. And by all means, we don't expect everybody to eat Wagyu beef every single night, but I think everybody should try it because it's awesome. And if you try it, you'll probably have it more often. And if you know where your beef's coming from, you can actually find different cuts and talk to different butchers and utilize that experience to get cheaper beef.
I could pull my 10-year-old out of the office right now. We're on spring break over here.
Yeah,
because she had a full blood Wagyu tenderloin last night for dinner.
Yeah,
that's her jam. She was like, oh,
she's a tenderloin girl.
This is delightful, Dad. This is just lovely preparation.
Yeah, our daughters are spoiled. Yeah.
Yeah, our daughter, we often ask her what she wants for dinner, and she'll say, can I have steak? And we're like, what a kid, like I never would ask my parents for steak. Like that was like special. And now we realize how important it is in adolescence to eat beef. Like it's great. It's a highly nutritious and delicious, right? We love to
so
say.
Good.
Yeah. So you guys mentioned, lowering the barriers to entry too. You guys like to do with the education. So that's something we love to do too. So that's why there's always, beef councils have always been known for recipes. And the goal of recipes is to lower the barrier of entry. When you're buying an expensive cut of beef, specifically, we want to lower the fear of like, you can buy this and you're not going to mess it up. We have a recipe, we've all done it. And then of course, there's other cuts too that are less expensive that we were talking about yesterday. The chuck roast is a cook once, dine twice kind of recipe, and all of those. So can you talk about ways to cook, how to lower that barrier to entry? What's some of your hot tips for if I'm going to go out and buy Wagyu for the first time to prepare myself?
Love it.
Well, let's see. That's a loaded question.
You're like, which answer do I give, right?
Let me start. Tyler, let me start by saying this: that Wagyu beef is super forgivable. So it's very good from medium rare to medium well, from 115 degrees internal temp to 145 degrees internal temp. And so it's really hard to mess up in that sense. But the thing that Tyler and I are doing before he goes in and tells you how he cooks all these steaks, we are with our Wagyu map. That was one of the things, is we want people to be able to go to our Meat Dudes approved Wagyu map, find a ranch and find the ranch profile and go, I really agree with this ranch and their philosophy and how they feed their cattle. And right next to it is a video of Chef Tyler and me cooking the actual steak. So we were saying, this is how you cook that ribeye from this Florida grass-fed Wagyu ranch. This is how you cook that tenderloin from that Southern Texas grain-fed, Wagyu ranch versus a Eastern Washington barley finished Wagyu ranch. So everything cooks a little bit differently, but it's all very forgivable. And that's the biggest thing is we want people to take that fear out of it. So you can actually go to the website and see exactly how to cook this Wagyu beef when it launches. But Tyler is the expert on actually how to cook all this stuff.
When in doubt, sear it out.
Yes.
Ooh, okay.
Right.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah. So that's going to take out so much room for error. And definitely, like, you can't just one pan sear on the stovetop, 2.5 inch thick cut New York, right? You got to finish that in the oven. But if you have a 1.5 inch thick cut ribeye, it's pan seared, cast iron, medium high heat. Keep your eye on it, and it's going to be four minutes aside, and it's going to be a perfect mid rare.
Oh, I love that.
It's super simple, honestly. And like, I kind of just say, keep it simple, stupid, KISS.
Yes.
Don't overthink it. The only one that you really have to be careful of is grilling.
Yes.
There's a lot of controversy. You can never grill Wagyu beef. Yeah, you can. But you got to stand there and keep your eye on it 100% of the time. Right? Yeah. You got to move it around. You got to flip it. You got to pull it off to a cool side. I like to keep a hot side of the grill and a cooler side of the grill, kind of indirect cooking, just in case you get a little bit of flare up. Move it, let it chill, get back after it. Open flame grilling, wood grilling, charcoal grilling is a little bit more labor of love when you're doing Wagyu. You got to keep your eye on it.
Okay.
But it's not impossible.
Yeah.
We've just been doing it the last 3 weeks out on the back patio. But like I said, a pan-seared Zabaton, pan-seared New York, pan-seared filet, pan-seared top sirloin, pan-seared culotte.
All of it.
The limit, right?
Yeah.
And when you pan-sear a steak, are you using butter?
No. Depending on the percentage, say purebred and higher, even some of the F1s you get that are 50-50, you don't really need much fat at all because the fat, the Wagyu fat specifically starts to melt at about 70 degrees.
Okay.
Right? So I often, when I'm butchering, I often do it in the cooler, in the walk-in, unless I'm really fast or unless it's super cold and chilly outside. So we don't have to worry about that. But if it's summertime, I got to cut so fast or do it in the walk-in, right? So answer your question. Ideally, I like to use just a little bit of tallow from said ranch. If you don't have tallow, you can use like a very mild flavored oil with a high smoke point, avocado oil, grapeseed oil, canola if you have to, but something that's not going to alter the flavor of the beef, because that's ideally what we're trying to do is educate everybody on the flavor of the beef.
Absolutely.
I usually just like to salt my steaks. I don't like to no piepa. Just no piepa. Just salt. Originally, like later on down the road, I'll do some sort of steak rub or whatever if I want to. But for the first time tasting a steak from a certain part of the country, the United States, or a certain ranch and feed and everything, I just salt it because I want to taste the terroir, if you will, of where the cattle are raised and where it comes from. So I'm kind
I
of a
love that.
purist.
Oh, I love that. No, often we talk to ranchers and chefs, and it's the salt. Just a little bit of salt. Just a little bit of salt on your steak. We love to play around with seasonings too, and then but the tallow, I was gonna say, if you don't have tallow from the local ranch, they sell tallow at every grocery store now. So we've always got tallow in our fridge now. So that way beef can be for breakfast too, because there's no other way to cook eggs.
Hey, Tyler, 100%. Talk about the product from Marble Ridge too.
Oh yeah. So at CattleCon, we were in Wagyu, what they call it, Wagyu Row or Wagyu Alley or something like that.
Okay.
And Marble Ridge down on the edge had a bottle of ultra clarified Wagyu tallow, which was shelf stable and like liquid.
Yeah.
Wow.
It looked like olive oil.
It was like olive oil bottle.
Yeah.
I have a jar at home of it just sitting on my countertop, and I use it for everything, sauteing my veggies, scrambling my eggs, whatever. So it was like, I didn't get into the nerdy science part as much as I should have, but it's almost like a centrifuge. It was like a pressure, a time, a temperature, and then it comes out this ultra clarified tallow that doesn't solidify. It was wild.
And it's a cool thing too. That Marble Ridge Wagyu, they're awesome, and it's cool because it's another thing like making it that lower barrier to entry. Like some people don't want to scoop a jar of tallow and put it in there. Like my wife would never do that, right? She's like, that looks crazy to me. But if I had some tallow olive oil and I just, it looked like olive oil and poured it in there, it's so much easier and it cooks the same. And so it's a really cool inventive product. We're hoping that gets on the shelf soon.
Yeah, that sounds very inventive because you're scooping out the tallow, but I've adjusted and I love it. We love using tallow and trying to use it as much as we can. We just kind of pop it in and then there's a lot of local producers here in New Mexico that have tallow lotions and tallow chapsticks and all of that.
Yeah,
so
love it.
We try and go all in. We're all in for beef. Even our dogs eat beef.
Yes.
We love that. Okay. So, we always ask ranchers about this, but tell us about a time you learned a hard lesson. I think just the human side of it, that we're all the same. We're all learning lessons. Can you think of a time that you learned a hard lesson?
Ooh, I think one for me, in the beef industry is, before we really got into this, and when we were talking to some ranchers now, I think we talked to over like 75 ranchers from all over the U.S., even in Australia, Japan, South America as well. Just got off the phone with somebody from Brazil. I used to think that the beef industry was everything was corn fed and everything was finished in these feedlots on dirt and the cattle were terrible. And I remember Arlie from Bar R, which is like Bar R Wagyu up in Eastern Washington, like her father, Dr. Jerry Reeves, is like the godfather of one of the godfathers of American Wagyu. He helped actually get that original export of Japanese cattle to Washington State, the Wagyu cattle. And so we're up there and we're talking about, these feedlots and that, like on a podcast. And she was like, hold on, Evan. Actually, a lot of these cattle that are on those feedlots right now were raised by like really, small family run farms. And I was like, oh man, I just like stuck my foot in my mouth. Like I didn't even realize that at that point. And there it is like, that's why we love telling these rancher stories, because when people they understand that there's so much fear, so much fear is taken out of the beef industry when you understand what the rancher is coming from and what they're just doing their best, and they're all these small family run farms and they've been doing it forever, and it's really the big four meat packers that are hurting the industry. It's not how they feed their cow. It's actually, they're doing a great job getting this amazing product, to market. And so she corrected me in such a sweet way, but but I was like, oh, okay, you know what? You're right. I should probably back off on that and realize that there's so much more to the industry than what I originally thought before I got into it.
Well, absolutely. And for New Mexico ranchers, a lot of them are what we'd call a cow calf operator, right? So they're raising calves. Well, then we don't have access to corn or grains here in New Mexico, right? We're a desert. So we've got, around the Rio Grande corridor, there's some alfalfa farms, but there's not a lot of farming in New Mexico to get that corn that gives that, corn fed, corn finished or grain finished flavor that a lot of Americans prefer or want, right? And so in New Mexico, you've got to send your calves after a certain time. You've got to send your calves to somewhere where there's access to grain, right? And so, like you said, then they go to those feedlots, and then a lot of the feedlots, there's different types of feedlots, but a lot of them are family owned, or and then sometimes they don't even own all the cattle in them, right? You can retain ownership as a cow calf operator. You send them to this massive feedlot. Well, it's just because it's like an apartment complex for cattle, right?
Yeah,
But
totally.
it's an apartment complex with a cafeteria, or maybe it's a dorm,
Yeah.
and so they go to this place where feed is easier to get to, and if we with scale makes lower cost to feed some animals and all of that. So so it is interesting. And in New Mexico, we don't have access to grain for grain finished cattle. We don't have access to a ton of processors. And actually, our legislation and our New Mexico Department of Ag and New Mexico Cattle Growers Associations lobbied recently to get grants for processors, because New Mexico has such a shortage of processors, and they don't have the capacity necessarily to produce more New Mexico beef, right? Or beef processed in New Mexico. So anyways, I digress. A lot of it is family operations, and that you see that large thing and you see this, and sometimes people get scared, right? They want to think the small, whatever, but sometimes it's large, because that's how these families can afford to continue, and that's how the cattle can make it to the finish line.
It's just the unfortunate part is that 80%, 75% of Americans think that don't understand that, right? They just think like, oh, it's just these big companies and this raising these cattle in this dirt patches, and they're force feeding them. And it's like, no, that's not correct at all. So
yeah, there's a lot of care and a lot of science that goes into it. I love too the feedlots. I love that there's a nutritionist for the cattle, and sometimes there's a team of nutritionists. And I think that's an important thing for people to understand. Like, I don't even have a nutritionist for myself, right?
Yeah.
I have a dietitian on staff at New Mexico Beef Council that's wonderful, but I don't pay attention to my nutrition and my intake. But those animals at those feedlots, they, to a science of what they're eating and what formula and what percentage of protein and all of these things. And I'm over here like, I should probably eat less, fewer cookies or whatever, that science and that care for the animals is something that we love to talk about. Absolutely. I could go on and on.
It's wild. I sent out a little questionnaire for all the ranches that signed up for the maps, and they sent it back, and it talks about like, how do you feed your cattle, because we want to understand that it's grass fed versus grain fed versus what type of grain, just so we can try to get those flavor profiles. But almost every single rancher on the profile writes like, okay, well, the nutritionist name is this, and I'm like, every single one has like a nutritionist, and then they could talk about what the nutritionist is feeding the cattle. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this, it's a total science. It's not just, oh, hey, go get some food and we'll just, see what happens.
Hope for the best. No,
nobody wants to lose cattle or have them get sick or anything like that. No. Absolutely. They're treating them like family.
So. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The cattle are there is the hard part of the understanding that they serve a purpose. And there's no good way to, talk about that necessarily, other than they are serving a purpose. It's, a circle of life and very important part to feed the world, but they're treated with the utmost respect. And, it's always like, it's also economical to treat your cattle well, especially right now, because cattle prices are at, record highs, and then they keep like getting higher and then a new record. And so just for the wallet alone, you have to take care of these animals. They're worth a lot of money now, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Even the
at
last
least.
10 years, they've like almost tripled in value. So yeah, absolutely. The care we go into it. Well, I love that. Well, um, is there anything else that you'd like to add that you wanted to make sure and get in about Wagyu? Um, is there
Evan,
any?
go. This is your time to shine, buddy.
Just vomit Wagyu all over. No, man, I think we covered a lot. Like, I really love to reiterate that it's a spectrum, that it's not just A5, that it's not just $200 a pound. I mean, we have a butcher shop and we'll sell, F1 Cross Ranch steaks for 11, $12. We'll sell
Wow.
full blood Denver steaks, 8 to 10 ounces for 20, 22, $25, depending on the ranch. And so it's when I walk into a big grocery store and I look at the ribeyes, they're more expensive because those are the Hollywood cuts, right? So the Hollywood cuts are the ribeye, the New York, and the tenderloin, and that makes up 8% of the cow. So let's start exploring with all these other cuts. Could maybe grab a skirt steak, a bavette, a Terrace Major, a Denver, work those chuck short ribs, Delmonico steaks. We love Delmonico steaks. We're working, Chef Tyler's working with the back end of the cow. We're showing people how to roast the top sirloin, the bottom sirloin, how to braise these things. So, there's so many more economical cuts when you're talking about a Wagyu cow as well, because the top round is going to be very tender. The bottom round is even going to be more tender. We've got buddies that are cutting up London broil steaks and throwing them on the grill and grilling them up and saying, hey, it's not like a super tender cut, but I like a little bit of chew, so I want it that way. So it's a really unique animal, we like to say, and there's a huge spectrum. Know where your meat comes from, most of all, because if you know where it comes from and you can see that ranch is verified with an association, and it's 100% full blood, and you can actually trace it back to the original animals that came over here in the 90s, it's going to be a better product. And that it's going to be a better product when it's verified and there's transparency and you can actually trust the source.
And I can expand on that just a little bit, from the chef standpoint, and looking at the animal in its entirety. 8 to 9% of an animal is the Hollywood cuts, right? The tenderloin, the ribeye, the New York. Where goes the rest of it? It can't all be grind, right? So when we go back to when we were talking about profitability, yes, of course, it takes a little bit longer to raise these animals, but the quality of the product that you come out is going to be worth more, whatever. So in the Wagyu animal itself, there's more stakeable items than just tenderloins, ribeyes, and New Yorks. You're going to look at culottes, completely different. The flanks are unbelievably different. The skirts are different. Even like eating full blood top sirloin.
Mm-hmm.
If I put it next to, say, a prime Angus tenderloin side by side, there's not a lot of people that can tell the difference.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about top sirloin versus a tenderloin. So you're talking about a $50 a pound steak versus a $13 a pound steak, and people won't even know the difference. So, I mean, as far as the profitability of the animal, there's more stakeable items in the animal, and that's going to, in turn, make you more money.
Yeah.
Or make us more money, however you want to look at it.
Yeah. Or save the consumer money at the end of the day.
Save more money if you don't want to buy that.
Because we always said you could buy a full blood Denver, for cheaper than you could buy a choice ribeye. And it's like unreal. Like the difference is going to be unbelievable. It's gonna be one of the best steaks you've ever had. We always call the Denver's like our Wagyu gateway drug. And it's like once people have it, they're like, okay, well, what's next? I'm moving on.
What else you got? Oh, I love that. So I think that's really fun. And we had actually a rancher on our podcast, or two brothers, Jim and Giovanni Armandatis, and they talk to consumers a lot. And talking about the other cuts, the rest of the animal, they said they had somebody call and say, well, why don't you just throw it through the ribeye machine? And just that explanation to people that, no, you get a finite number of ribeyes from an animal. And so, like you said, that marbling in a Wagyu, you can have some more, marbling steaks. So that's really interesting. And and an important thing for consumers to learn, that there is more to a beef animal. There are more cuts. Our website has recipes for different cuts, and then you can cut on. We even did a display at the state fair that you can click on a part of the beef animal and then go, oh, what's that? Well, that's the chuck. Here's some chuck recipes, and here's what
Cool.
cuts come out. And then also, what can you treat the same? So if you have a recipe for a New York strip, well, you could actually also use that with these other things. And so we're always trying to help people understand that just because it's not those, I've never heard them called the Hollywood steaks, but just because it's not those ones that and are familiar doesn't mean it's not going to be a great meal. So
Totally.
yeah,
So many
we love that.
cuts. Yeah.
Yeah. There's so many things. You talk about the culotte and the bavette and even the picanha. Those are things that
So
5
good.
years ago I didn't know about.
Oh,
And
totally.
then there's talks to the tri-tip is really popular in California,
I was just gonna say tri-tip.
yeah,
So-
and it's gaining popularity in New Mexico big time. And I talked to somebody who worked at meat processors in Colorado. They used to throw the tri-tip in the grind. Like that was, 10, 20 years ago, it was just going into the grind. Well, that's a delicious cut of meat. I love a tri-tip. I had one at a baseball game the other day. So,
It's
a tri-tip sandwich. But yeah, it's crazy to think of the knowledge sharing and the things we're learning more about making those cuts that are, now value added products instead of just throwing it in the grind. Let's not do that.
yeah,
You have big pockets to have a tri-tip pocket steak. If you're gonna throw it into the grind, I'm gonna snag that thing and put it in my pocket.
Honestly,
the tri-tip's the new. We call it the West Coast brisket because so many barbecue restaurants are just smoking that up because it's a heck of a lot easier. It's done
Quicker.
Not as much time.
and people
so much quicker.
absolutely love it. They love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
We're talking to people on the East Coast, and they're like, "Why can't we get any tri-tips over here?" The West Coast is like eating all of the tri-tips.
Northern California takes them all.
Yeah. Santa Maria's right where it started. They say right, the Santa Maria tri-tip.
Yeah.
Oh, that's perfect. Well, we could talk cuts for way too long.
Love
Well, kind of maybe my last two questions, but the last one I always ask is, your favorite way to eat beef. I feel like that could be a long answer. So the second to last, we love to ask, why do you do what you do? When, you might get usually we're talking ranchers, we're saying the days are hard, the nights are long, all the things. But for you guys, whether it's, criticism, challenges, the restaurant business is not an easy business, and you guys have, expanded to multiple, right? Why do you do what you do? What keeps you going?
Yeah.
For me, it's all I really know. Right? I would love to tell you that I'm gonna shoot for the senior PGA golf tour, but that ain't happening. So for me, it's like I've been bred into this industry, and it's in my veins. And like I said, I love to continue to educate myself. It's kind of there's no end game really. You just continue to learn all the time about this industry, whether it's the restaurant, the business, the meat, the rancher, the farms, the whatever. And every person that you meet has their own particular story. Not just mine, not just Evan's, not just yours, but everybody that you meet that has the same passion for this industry, for this restaurant, for whatever. Everybody's got crazy stories, and that's the best part about it. I think getting done with your shift and sitting down and having a shift beer afterwards and shooting the shit with somebody you know nothing about, and you have so much in common, a bunch of different other stories. So for me, that's kind of it. I just love the community aspect of this industry, period.
Yeah, no, me too. I mean, I think, my family had restaurants growing up. And so I've always just been in the restaurant industry, and always just tried to take what I know and just keep making building blocks and building blocks and building blocks and taking it to the next level. And when Wagyu came kind of right in front of us, we wanted to take that opportunity, especially for me. Like I said, there was no other information out there to learn. And I'm like big on just diving right in. Like I coach football and I have like 150 football books and football podcasts, and I'm just like constantly listening. I'm like, what are they saying? How do I figure this out? And so I didn't have that with this industry. And so we wanted to create it so people can learn more about it. And I think it's really been rewarding for people like when Tyler said that older couple that came up to me at the end of at some Mexican restaurant in Nashville and said, you guys were serving the Wagyu, and I think we're going to go and we're going to try to make some F1 cross. And I was like, wow, like we could have an influence on this industry and make some amazing beef and help generate more sales in America, to help the American rancher. Because the more I get into this industry, the more I realize that it's so hard for them, and we want to help out as much as possible and create more revenue streams for them, like our map. I keep mentioning our map, but I want to take people and send a bunch of people to this Wagyu map and have them go, oh, I found this rancher. I'm going to go straight to them and buy from their ranch and buy straight from the rancher and not have to go through a bunch of third-party people just to make it happen, right? Like we want to get people there, go buy from them. Go buy from them. You connect with that rancher. You want to try grass-fed in Florida? Go buy from them. You are very religious and you like that? Go buy from these guys and check out their philosophy. However you want to connect with the rancher and understand what they do, is to me is what we're trying to do. We're trying to make that connection so people can have it a little bit easier, hopefully, and we can, make people find the best beef around.
I feel like being a cattle rancher is a lot like being a restaurant owner.
Totally is. Oh my God.
The work is a lot and the profits are not.
Yeah. Thin margins, long days, weekends, holidays.
Yeah. Oh, that Happy New Year. Said what chef ever.
And everybody thinks you're rich.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody thinks you're just rich.
Oh yeah.
All these rich ranchers out there over the people, right? Like, that's not right.
Yeah. Well, and then even, I can assume too the relationship you guys have to have with a banker as well, right? A rancher, you never knew, or I never, realized until, I started working in the industry, how much you have to have a banker, right? And how much debt it takes, or how much, like you said, those thin margins, and you've got to have the courage to get a loan or get this or no, and then the knowledge to know, look, we're going to make it profit here and here. That's how we're going to pay this down, or anything. There's a lot of similarities, right? Business owners, and then I love that you guys both said it was generational too. That's a special thing in the ranching industry, is often it's a generational switch or handover. So well, perfect. Well, go ahead.
Let me just clear this up. I'm going to keep my children out of the kitchen. I'm just going to say that right now. Because I want them to enjoy their Christmas dinners and their Thanksgiving.
Ranchers.
There you go. Well, heck yeah, let's have them be ranchers, because the average age of an agriculturalist is consistently rising. So we do need more young people to be willing to take the chance. So yeah, if they want to be ranchers, we support.
Yeah, good.
I love that. Yeah, sounds good. We'll have some ranchers on my board, and some New Mexico ranchers that have a lot to teach. I am still very much learning, but there's plenty of them that have been, like my friend Marky Hageman Jones says, gate getters for others, not gatekeepers, but gate getters. Yeah, she's a public speaker that I adore. Anyway, so my last question, and it's always been really fun. What is your favorite way to eat beef? And it can be kind of a current favorite or a forever favorite, either way. But what's your favorite way to eat beef?
I'm a braiser.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love all things braised, all of them. It's my favorite. There's so much more flavor profile and dynamic in a braise, because you are breaking down the protein structures so much more than just searing or grilling a steak, which is also delightful. Don't get me wrong, but a braise, that's my favorite.
Yeah.
I love it.
Okay.
I am a griller. That's where I do most of my damage. And that's kind of why we wanted to teach people how to cook and grill too. Wagyu, at least. I just grilled up that full blood Wagyu skirt steak, Tyler, from Prime Valley Farms.
So good.
Oh my gosh. I ate it up the other day. I think it was 2 nights ago. That was the last thing I grilled. In that thing, like Tyler said, I was moving that thing on the grill nonstop. There was no close the grill and let's watch the baseball game. No, it's move, move, move. Otherwise, that thing's going to flare up. But one tip, too, is that Tyler, we came up with, or you came up with, was really let those coals get super white hot. You don't want any flame on that grill. You want to just be really patient. So that was one thing about grilling Wagyu. Like, be so patient with those coals, get them all the way down, and then throw it on there. But yeah, grilling all day. I love grilling Wagyu.
You guys have me excited, and I feel like I want to try some. And we've got a big green egg that through our partnership with the outdoor kitchen distributor. And I'm thinking we need to try something out there. We need to go get some Wagyu or find some Wagyu from a local rancher.
Yeah,
we get those guys to send us one of those green eggs.
Yeah, right. Let's ask them if we put this on.
I just got in contact with them. Yeah, we're trying to hit up green egg and Rec Tech so we can show people how to cook on this, because we're literally going to be cooking Wagyu from 50 to 75 ranches all over the U.S. So like, there's not going to be anybody else who's doing that. So
yeah, that's super interesting. We have a local beef directory here in New Mexico, and you know, it's so special. If you want to hear the story, and the way you guys are doing it is going to be really neat. So maybe we can link to through Lone Mountain. We can link to your Wagyu directory when it's ready, so that if other people are from out of state and they want to get to someone in their state, because absolutely I support. No matter where you buy beef, you're supporting a rancher, and if you want that story, you want that connection, fully support that. Absolutely. That's wonderful.
Get to know your rancher. Get to know your ranchers.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much for agreeing to be on the podcast. I really appreciate it. It's been so much fun to get to know you guys and talk through so many great things. We are excited to see, or I'm excited to see your map and to follow along. And then we'll plan on seeing you at CattleCon in Nashville for sure.
All right. Yes.
Awesome. Well, cool.
Thank you, Caroline. Appreciate you reaching out. This has been really fun, and yeah, hopefully we can just get more people eating beef all over the U.S., supporting the U.S. ranchers.
Absolutely. No better mission for me. So awesome. There you go. Well, thank you guys. Behind the Burger is produced by the New Mexico Beef Council to celebrate the people and stories behind New Mexico beef. Thanks for listening. Follow the show so you never miss an episode, and connect with us on social media for more behind-the-scenes stories and updates. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at NM Beef, and on Facebook at NM Beef Council. We'll see you next time, and until then, beef, it's what's for dinner.